State of the franchise is back. The San Francisco 49ers come away with a win out of the bye. There is now a divisional opponent in front of the San Francisco 49ers in the Seattle Seahawks as they continue to try to right the ship of the season. That's been a little bit bumpy up until this point, but yesterday we had some big time news. The San Francisco 49ers paid Deommodore Lenoir. So we're going to react to that. We're going to talk to all the different things about the current state of the San Francisco 49ers. That's why it's the name of the show. So Jason Aponte, Brad Graham, we're going to get into it all right now. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Mr. Aponte, good to see you. The San Francisco 49ers barely come away with a win. But first, let's talk about Deommodore Lenoir, the signing. What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about that one?
Amazing. I mean, again, this was always something that was on the table and something that we kind of feared, with whatever we believed the salary cap would look like. But to get this done right now, I think was obviously a smart move because with every single game, the price goes up. But also, and I just kind of wanted to point this out because I thought it was something that I saw a lot of, on Twitter and everything was, well, they got it done early. The thing that you have to keep in mind is with Warner and Bosa and Kittle and Ayuk is that they were under contract. So they can't be bid on by anybody else. But if you allow Deommodore Lenoir to get to free agency, all that would do is drive up the price, and all that would do is put you in a bidding war. So the situations aren't exactly apples to apples. So that's why, if you're wondering why this got done early, why you see Dre Greenlaw and him getting things done, is because they wouldn't have been under contract moving forward. So you have to get this done now. So right now, I think, again, the biggest takeaway is this. The 49ers pivoted in this draft class to secondary. Malik Mustafa, Renardo Green, Deommodore Lenoir was already here. Feels like Mooney Ward is going to be on his way out. By the way, shouts out to Mooney, and I hope him and his family are, I hope they're doing well. But it does feel like Mooney Ward's the one that's going to be not here next season. But everything feels better now that you have Lenoir and you have Renardo Green, who have been incredible this season. But now the 49ers have kind of shown you the shift in team building from when it was inside out. Now it's outside in. And I think they kind of understand that's the way that the NFL is going in terms of you have to cover, and you're going to have to find a way to cover guys for longer because, as we've noticed in the bigger games, sometimes you don't get holding calls, and the defensive line doesn't always win. So you have to be able to cover a little bit more. I just love it because, one, it's done. Two, who's going to be manning the outside for the 49ers for years to come? And three, it just shows that the 49ers aren't going to be stuck in their same ways over and over again and tried something different. And for all intents and purposes, so far this season, the secondary has been one of the very, very big bright spots of the 49ers defense. You're muted.
Thank you. Malik Mustafa has been phenomenal. So I agree with you with the way the secondary has been performing. Renardo Green, absolute dog. And of course, Deommodore Lenoir, like you've already explained, his ability to play inside out, all the things that he can do, absolutely fantastic. And so I do like that the 49ers have put more of an emphasis because I remember when we were at training camp and Deommodore Lenoir was at the bottom of the depth chart. I remember doing a show with you, Jason, where we did surprise cuts, and one of my surprise cuts was Deommodore. Not because I didn't like Deommodore, but because he was absolutely buried on a thin secondary group
behind Ambry Thomas.
Yeah, and behind like guys that they signed off the streets. Like he was at the bottom. He was in what I would consider the doghouse for the DBs, and so that's why I had mentioned him. And I think we even talked about on that show. It's like, I don't want to cut Deommodore, but we're talking surprise cuts. he's at the bottom of the depth chart. He's barely getting any reps. And so for him to go from that point all the way to ascending to a starting spot and then becoming one of the best corners in the league, you got to tip your cap. These are the kinds of stories of why I love football. I'm a big player development guy. I'm big into watching guys take advantage of their opportunities that aren't supposed to be this. Deommodore wasn't supposed to be this. Now, in his brain, he talked about it today. He's like, he thought he was a third rounder, which at this point, you redraft, we're probably taking him high second, maybe even talking about the first. But he has completely just elevated his game, elevated his mentality, his confidence, I think is a big part of how he plays. He plays like he's 100 pounds larger than he is. And I love that the 49ers rewarded that. And you make a great point about when he got paid, because he is a free agent. And we were talking about this offline with like for Ayuk, for example, he was under contract. He was on the 5th year, heading into play on his 5th year, whereas Demo is in the final year of his rookie deal. He was going to be a free agent. So the circumstances aren't the same. However, still, you got to tip your cap to the 49ers for getting it done. And so I think that's the most exciting part of it for me, was like no offseason drama with Deommodore contract extension. So I'm happy about it. I think it's a phenomenal move, and really, really, really excited for this to have him on this. He's 25, Jason. He's a young 25. And so he is going to be manning that. I don't even know that. Does anyone else in the league do what he does, where base down plays outside, kicks inside nickel?
No, not in that way, but there are certain instances of it. Like Jalen Ramsey does it. Like Jalen Ramsey can kick inside, and he's been phenomenal this season as well too. But it's not base downs outside, and it's just circumstances. If he's following someone and they go into the slot, Jalen Ramsey can head into the slot. I'm sure there's other guys that do it that way, but I cannot think off the top of my head a guy who is literally out there first and second down and then third down there inside. It's just, it's a win for the organization also, because he's their guy. And for as much as we talk about, well, they missed on this player, Warner, Bosa, Kittle, Lenoir, all guys that they drafted, that they went out there and got. Greenlaw went out there and they got, right? Mustafa, like to reward the guys that you believed in, and because it's well-deserved, is really, really important. And I think, again, it just shows, no matter how much we go back and forth about, well, this miss and that miss, the amount of homegrown talent the 49ers have, and not just homegrown talent, the guys that are just starters, like the best at their position type. And I think there's a large, strong argument for Lenoir being the best nickel in the league, because the intricacies of playing that position are less about coverage and more about being an extra linebacker who can cover, because you got to get your helmet dirty on run defense, and we know that about Lenoir. So it's fascinating to watch how the 49ers have been able to identify talent, develop that talent, and then not only just have them be starters, but be Pro Bowlers and all pros. Like, I think, again, that's the part that we bicker back and forth about, like, well, they missed on this guy, they missed on that guy. You've got to give them credit for being able to identify all this talent and being able to keep them. And the reason that they get paid so much is because they're at the top of the league in their position. And I think that is something that we should be able to hang our hats on as 49ers fans and be proud of.
Absolutely. And it's such a, I think, a boost. You saw the players at practice today. You saw Deommodore break them down. They're all doing the money sign. Like, this is what these guys live for. Like, this is it. Getting these types of deals is why, like, we as fans get romantic about football. Oh, you win the rings, the accolades. This is also a way for them to support their family for generations.
Yeah.
This is life-changing money that sets them up and their kids and their kids' kids, and this is huge. So yes, like we're in it for the Super Bowls. We're in it for those types of things. But these players work their tails off. They put their health and bodies on the line for these days to get these types of paychecks. What do you think about this concept, Jason? Do you believe that this the way they signed him early, and to your point, I think you contextualized it well. But do you think it still sends a kind of a message to the locker room? Because the message to the locker room around contract negotiations is do what we say, work your tail off, and we're going to drag it into the 11th hour and, potentially put your name through the mud in the media, and then we'll pay you. Do you think that this might be a little bit of a signal inside that locker room, like, all right, they took care of their guy?
100%. I mean, Dominick Puni has to look at this and say, I'm not going to be able to be playing on a fifth-year option. There is no way the 49ers are going to allow Puni to get out there in free agency at this point. So you can't even allow that to even be a discussion. So it sends a message that do what you need to do, and based on the circumstances, we can drag it out as long as we can. Obviously, like we talked about with Warner and Bosa and all of them, they were under contract. There's no bidding war for them. But for the other guys in the room, particularly Puni, who's having a monster year, Malik Mustafa, right? Ricky Pearsall is going to be the one who can have the fifth-year option, so you can check that out later down the line. But you look at all these guys who are not going to have that fifth-year luxury and who want to get paid and will get paid. So it tells a guy like Dominick Puni, yeah, if I continue to work, I'm going to get paid, and rightfully so. Again, the circumstances are just different. I understand everyone not wanting this to drag into the offseason, but there wasn't a chance for this to drag into the offseason because he's a free agent. Yeah, because he's a free agent. So that was never something that was on the table. If you allow Deommodore Lenoir to get out there in the free agency, someone will pay more than what the 49ers were going to do. And I might want to add, doing this in the middle of the season will have a Greenlaw effect of where we look back on his production and what he's being paid, which is 12th and it's 12th annual average value, and we'll look at that and say that's a bargain what we're getting for that type of player. So it behooves the 49ers to do it all those ways, but it just, again, it just really wasn't like a same situation when it comes to all those other guys, especially like Bosa and Ayuk, who have a fifth-year option. No one can get in here and bid on them, but you couldn't let Lenoir, you can't let Puni, you can't let any of these other guys hit free agency. So you have to get it done early. But it sends a message to all those guys that, yeah, we'll take care of you. We don't even have to go to the offseason because it's virtually impossible to go to the offseason with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's well said, phenomenally put. And again, I think we talk about vibes on the show all the time. That's some good vibes right there. So
of course.
Absolutely loved it. Because I think, there was some anxiety, right, about Deommodore. Like, that was one of the names that we talked about. Is Deommodore Lenoir actually going to return? Because is he pricing himself out, et cetera, et cetera? Obviously, there'll be plenty of time to discuss Brock Purdy's impending, contract that's coming up as well. He finds himself in that same kind of boat, right? He's not an unrestricted free agent. Brock, is he unrestricted?
Brock is look, the Brock thing,
no,
I
he's
think
heading into his fourth year, right? He has a
right.
Fourth
So he's
year.
not, yeah, so he's not done. Like he's not done.
He's still under team control. So that
year
might be an interesting one.
That's the offseason drama right there. Because you have to get that done. There's your offseason drama right there. You have to get that done during the training camp time, because you cannot allow him to go into that season like that. So that's different. That's different, in that way. And especially with quarterback play, never mind. I'm not even gonna give you a hypothetical. It has to happen. It has to happen. That's it. Training camp. No hypotheticals, nothing. By training camp, they have to have that done.
Yeah, we can't have a missed training camp.
No hypotheticals.
No hypotheticals. We'll discuss. I think everything has a time and a place. Right now, it's not the time and the place to discuss that, so we'll move on. But nonetheless, great for Deommodore. Great for I do appreciate the 49ers front office for getting this done. For
Yeah.
me, as an outsider, I think that this is great. I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Let's talk. You mentioned it, so let's bring it up. Dominick Puni, his performance against the Bucks, and this will be a night of the Bucks kind of game. What we liked,
Mhm.
what we didn't like, things that the 49ers can improve upon.
Mhm.
What did you think of Puni, not only in this game against the Bucks, but just so far in the season?
I mean, there's got to be at least a discussion about him being an All Pro. I'll keep it a bean. I don't really watch right guards, so it's hard for me. Like we can go by PFF grades and all that stuff,
It's hard to
but
contextualize.
100%, right? Like we don't know what it is about like their, well, I mean, I can tell you what the offense is, like
Right.
with certain things, like what the Bucks were doing when Tristan Wirfs left the game was just quick dropbacks and throws, right? Like you're not gonna have Baker drop back like that entire time, right? So I can contextualize that part. What I mean is like, do they have a dominant right tackle? Is he the one really doing those things? Like those PFF grades they're a part of the puzzle. They're just not the end of it. But regardless, it's insane that Dominick Puni hasn't allowed a sack for like 4 years in college, and then he comes back and he's here as a rookie and he continues the streak. At times you can think, how is this going to translate? Will it translate? And it just certainly has. Like he's lived up to the reputation in every way. And I think early on, the thought was, if he could just take a step up a little bit in run blocking, it literally would fix itself. And it's like we're watching someone learn on the fly, and I think we feel that he's still scratching the surface. And
Crazy
and what
part about it.
right, and what we think is important about this too is regardless of whoever the right tackle is having a right guard who understands stunts and is smart. It absolutely 1,000% helps the people around them. You obviously want each player to, take responsibility for certain things, but he's such a high IQ player. He's everything that he was built to be. And funny enough, the Seattle Seahawks actually drafted a guard 5 spots before Puni, and they could have had him at right guard. So this
There
is
was two.
this is my
There was a guard drafted right in
Mhm,
front of him too, Zach Zinter, who I
mhm.
also liked coming out of Michigan.
Yeah. So this is my Seattle. Nice job, idiots. Nice job blowing the process there. But no, look,
The
all
dummies.
jokes dummies. all jokes aside though, Puni's been everything and more. And it's just when you hear, brick wall, like you think, okay, that was cool in college. How is this gonna translate? Yeah, it's translated, and it's just it's been remarkable to watch in his first season.
Yeah, no, we've talked about it a bunch, throughout the years doing our shows. It's the transition from college trenches to NFL trenches is so dramatically different, specifically for the offensive line, because there are a lot of guys in college who are playing because they're just bigger than the other guy. They're just stronger than the other guy. And when you get to the NFL, everyone's big, everyone's strong, everyone's fast, but they have the technical ability. They have the game within the game locked down, and they have the mental fortitude to be able to set you up thinking you're going to go do one thing and they hit you with a counter, and they have the power, speed, and technique to execute it, and you're cooked, man. They can beat you on so many different levels. That's why it is always so hard sometimes for offensive linemen to make that transition, and specifically for mid-round picks. Like, you can find every year, like clockwork, starters in the mid rounds. It's one of the things I say all the time every year in the draft. Um, but it's the high traits guys who go early, the guys with the insane measurables and the insane physical tools. Like with Puni, like he had great measurables, but I think his knock on him was like what you mentioned in the run game. He's really high in the run game, and I think people thought that might not translate as well to the next level, especially being a tackle who's going to have to kick inside, because he doesn't. When you watch him in college, he doesn't have a kick step. It was one of the weirdest things that I've ever scouted on a tackle who doesn't have a kick step, and that is like a prerequisite for playing tackle at any level. And he just didn't have it, and he found other ways to be successful. But when you watch Puni, you see it's his feet and it's his hips. He can swivel so well. And because he can swivel so well, and he has the cerebral ability to understand everything that's flying around him, that's why he's constantly blocking too. It's the
Mhm.
trend that I keep pointing out. We saw it happen in preseason when he sees or senses something, he knows that he can stick out his big ass arm and lock and hit someone in the chest plate and lock someone up and stop their momentum. And then all of a sudden, he's blocking two guys. And with the 49ers and, with some of the struggles of McKivitz and Brendel, he's had to do that quite a bit. And he's saving their bacon on some plays. And that's remarkable for a rookie. And you mentioned like, well, how do you measure it against? I agree. I'm not out here studying any other offensive linemen, but I do think one of the benefits of studying Trent Williams for so long and just understanding he is tiers above anyone else or has been at moments that it kind of sets that gauge, right? And so you can see the closer you are to Trent, that means you're really freaking good. And
Mhm.
he's I would say he played better than Trent in that game.
Mhm.
And so when you're talking about that and you're like, damn, a rookie had a better performance than Trent Williams. And that's not even saying Trent had a bad performance. I'm just
No.
saying Pony did more exceptional things than Trent, and that's wild. And so when you try to contextualize that and you start talking about where does he rank, man, if you are playing that well, and we already know this, the metrics that they can gather from offensive line play, you got to talk about him as an all pro. You got to talk about him as one of the best guards in the league because that's what he's doing.
Yeah. And again, drafted, right? So I think we both understand like how good Pony's been. And it kind of opens the door. Although I did see somebody saying something about Aaron Banks returning. Honestly, I'm not all the way on board with that because I think your replacement's already in-house at left guard in Spencer Burford, who's probably going to look more comfortable on the left side and had looked better when he took over for Banks, I believe, in week 1 against the Jets, right? And let's not forget, Puni plays on the inside. So you're going up against Vita Vea. Like, that's no easy task either. But him being able to be that good that quickly is just, it's early returns. It's not even like we can say, hey, it's just a 3-game stretch. No, this is 10 weeks. It's 9 games.
We got a,
This
we
is
got a sample size now.
Yeah, this is 9 games now. This is who you are. This is who you are. Like, of course, it's going to be hard for him to sustain a whole season of him not giving up any sacks, but he's pretty close, right now at this point. But I want to pivot to this, Brad, and I want to ask you this because I had been on the record at saying that this draft class was imperative, probably the most important in the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era, based on the roster turnover that we had projected going forward and what it means to find contributors, starters, and possibly all pros like they found in Puni. And this draft class already feels like the best draft class in the entire Lynch Shanahan era. And we just started getting glimpses of Ricky Pearsall now, right? You get
Right.
you get a starting right guard, you got a starting safety, you got a starting corner, right? You've got your first round wide receiver, you've got Jacob Cowing, who we're all waiting to develop. So right now he's a core special teamer. All of these guys are on early returns, but they're starters, and they're starters with they're not just there to fill a body. They're not there to fill a spot. Renardo Green's one of the highest graded corners in the league. And that's the reason that, unfortunately, Mooney Ward's going to find himself on another team next season. But you feel great already after, week 10 saying our secondary is going to be led by Renardo Green, Deommodore Lenoir, and Malik Mustafa. And then hopefully Jair Brown as well. So you've got your secondary of the future, and it's cheap. And that's the part about this draft class that has me so excited is that you're finding contributors, starters, and all pros and pro bowlers, and we're only through 10 weeks of this season. So it has to be right now, in my opinion, top to bottom, the best draft class in the Lynch Shanahan era. And I don't think it's particularly close.
I think you can definitely say it's the best in regards to early returns. I think without a shadow of a doubt, and that's even I mean, yes, you had was it defensive rookie of the year in Nick Bosa, and you had Debo Samuel as a contributor. Who else came out of that draft class? 2019.
19.
That was also Greenlaw, right? Fifth round draft
Yes.
pick.
Yes.
So you had some early returns, but I think when you talk about everyone and you can see, and obviously with Ricky, he's behind the 8 ball because he got
Mhm.
shot.
Yeah.
And we just saw what he
Oh,
was able
all
to
right.
do.
You want me to go through the list of
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
2019 one? All right, so maybe the 2019 one could give us a run for the money. You ready?
Okay, yeah.
So second overall, who? Nick Bosa.
Nick Bosa.
Number
Debo.
2, Debo Samuel.
Yeah.
Number 3, Jalen Hurd. Cool. We don't got to talk about that. Number 4, Mitch Wishnowsky. Cool. We don't got to talk about that. Number 5, Dre Greenlaw. Number 6, Caden Smith. Number 6, Justin School. Old friend alert, by the way, Justin School
He
in Tampa
played
Bay.
in that game last week.
He took over for Tristan Wirfs. Yeah, old friend alert. Tim Harris is the last one. So what you got was you got Dre Greenlaw, stud, starter. You got a punter, starter. I'm just trying to be nice. You got Debo Samuel and you got Nick Bosa. So there's an argument. 2019 and this one is the argument, but I think my argument is more.
Go ahead. My bad.
Well, I think my argument is that you're going to get more contributors out of all 5 to 7 rounds than you are from that one. Although the guys that you got from 2019 are all pros and some of the best at their position.
Yeah. I think if we're talking early contributors, obviously you get a defensive end at number 2. He's going to contribute. He's expected to be a defensive player of the
and it was
rookie
Nick
of the year candidate. And it was Nick Bosa.
And it was Nick Bosa. Yeah.
Generational, right? So that kind of weights it into 2019. Obviously, Debo Samuel came on stronger. I think Debo didn't really do all that much until Emmanuel Sanders came over. And then we started to see his maturation start to take off. Dre Greenlaw, obviously, famously, especially with Seattle week coming up, with he got dubbed the Seahawk killer that season for both games and how he played. He picked off Russell Wilson in his first one, and then the second one, one of the biggest plays of Kyle Shanahan's tenure up until this point. So, and of course, you got a starting punter out of it, Jason. And Jalen Hurd did look generational for one game in the preseason.
We'll always have that, Jalen.
Meanwhile, our boy Terry McLaurin is. Don't
talk about it.
I just love it though, because I know you're happy. I know you're not happy that he's not doing with the Niners, but I know you're happy that Terry has a quarterback and Terry is doing Terry things. It's really I'm happy to see it.
Nobody's happier than Terry.
Right.
No, so happy. He's like, oh my God, is this what this is like? My God, like nobody's happier than Terry. But yeah, like I think the point about the draft class is, you have Debo Samuel all pro, Nick Bosa all pro, Dre Greenlaw all pro, but to hit on a successful draft class, having 3 of those guys is huge. But when you have 5 to 6, 7 contributors in a whole draft class, and they range from solid starter to above average starter to all pro and everything, and you're getting contributions already, and and I especially believe that Ricky Pearsall is now just scratching the surface, because I could see some things on film that I am. Though the concern was, can he beat press man? Well, what he's doing now is he's understanding the intricacies of route running by beating the press man. But then while that corner's on your hip pocket, I know where I need to be for my quarterback to give him the window. And that is the little stuff that you're looking for from a guy who, if you're worried about him beating press man, or if you think that, guys win in different ways at the receiver position. And I'm really passionate about receivers because I love watching them, and it's my favorite, right? But guys win with route running. Guys win with speed. Guys win with intelligence. What I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing a guy who can do it all in different ways and might be able to put it all together. So we're still talking about this draft class, and Pearsall is coming along right now. And we expect more from Jacob Cowing, who's just a core special teamer now at this point. Malik Mustafa's a starter. Renardo Green is going to be the outside corner going forward for a long time. Like these are things. And then, you can't mention anything without mentioning Puni, right? Garendo is somebody who we expect a little bit more from as we go forward as well, too. A lot of people have
talk about Garendo.
Right. So there's a lot of like the early returns from everybody in this draft class. It far exceeds what that draft class of 2019 is because there's more people contributing.
Right. That's fair. I think that's a great way to kind of quantify it, for sure. A little bit top heavy with 2019,
right?
But so far from a big net perspective, they're getting contributions in important spots. And like you said, we're still trying to see who some of these guys are. We really don't know what Jacob Cowing is going to be, because he just hasn't had a ton of opportunities. We really don't know just yet how good Isaac Garendo can be because we've only seen him in a small sample. But in that small sample, he had gotten better in every single game. Now, obviously, he had the bust in this game, but that's going to happen. It's protections. It's kind of like the last thing that feels like comes for running backs. So
that's why Kyle doesn't want to take Christian McCaffrey off the field right there.
Moment. And I will say, let's talk about Christian a little bit. When watching the tape, I was instantly reminded of how much they miss Christian McCaffrey as a pass blocker, as someone who can be one-on-one with a blitzing linebacker, with a blitzing cornerback, a blitzing safety, and own his rep. Again, I remember getting into a pushback with someone on Twitter last year about like how someone said he was like one of the worst pass blockers in the league or something like that from the running back position. I was like, you guys are crazy because
just making stuff up.
He's elite. Like literally, like he's elite at pass blocking. And it was just a perfect reminder. Obviously, so good to have him back. You saw the 6 receptions. You saw the running back become a receiving option again with Christian McCaffrey back. And, maybe not so much, they weren't as successful rushing the ball, but CMC still made his presence felt and in multiple different ways.
And what I remember and what I was reminded of is how Christian McCaffrey being on the field affects spacing for everybody. And with the way that the Bucks are primarily a zone team, and they blitzed Brock Purdy, I believe it's 64% of the time. Well, you can't really run zone off blitzes, otherwise Purdy's going to be able to pick that apart. So they went to a little bit more man. When I did see them in their zone shells, they're so far out that when you run Christian McCaffrey underneath and they come rushing up like to go get him, now you got space up top. Now you've got space to the right. Now, like, that's the gravity stuff that is hard to quantify without giving film examples of like him being able to just have the impact and show himself, create enough of a diversion and put it in their mind that we need to find where 23 is, and you have to be pulled up a little bit further. And then let's not forget, I mean, some of my favorite plays in this game were, again, the idea of a check down and what's a design route, it's for the people that want to, kind of take shots at Brock Purdy, everything's a check down. But they got back to, hey, Christian McCaffrey's out there. Oh, he's going to be on a D end. Oh, man, whip his ass in a route and let's get yards. Like now, Brock, you don't have to process anything. You see what they see. Alexa, I'm cooking. Stop. Like you see what they see, right? We see the same thing. And we're getting the ball out quickly because they're blitzing and it's a mismatch. Just all of those things all together. And the running game is going to pick up. I think Christian wasn't all the way there, based on rust. And I think he explained the same thing as well, too. But the gravity, him just being on the field, you have to start looking and finding 23 now. Like you can't hone in on one thing. And I think that's the part that while we want the red zone issues to be picked up, and we thought that it would just be an end all be all cure all with Christian McCaffrey. I think that's the part that makes this offense more dynamic and it makes it harder. Now you have to cover every single blade of grass, and not that you weren't before, but you weren't as worried about Jordan Mason coming out of the backfield and that being something that that could really hurt you.
Oh,
You still there? Yeah.
yeah. I thought it cut out. I agree that I don't think McCaffrey's all the way back. I think
Mhm.
that you could absolutely see um a couple more weeks getting his legs back under him, getting that
Yep.
explosion back.
Mhm.
Um he's still got the vision, still got the cutting ability. That's there. It's just like the explosive nature that CMC was just so just on a different level.
Mhm.
But I expect that to come back. He has. I'm sure he's been off his feet for a lot of time over these last couple weeks, months to just let his Achilles calm down a little bit. So you got to give him some time. But still, what did he play? Like 88% of the snaps?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he he's like it
Well,
was funny because I was like, hey, let him rip. And then Jay Glazer comes out and like, oh, he's gonna be on a snap count. And then it was like, no, he's
yeah,
not.
but I got no, but I got the but then I got the notification because I was ready to deploy him on my fantasy teams and they were like 20 touches. I was like, that sounds about right. Like,
Yeah, and that
again,
sounds normal.
right. Like, but it's the same thing that McCaffrey said after the game. If I'm active, if I'm active, then he was like, it's full rip. He was like, and I'll be honest, I kind of would have liked to seen the 49ers kind of mix it up, but the reason that they can is because one, Kyle doesn't feel as comfortable running his offense without him out there. And two, you can get those issues right there with like Garendo missing a block because he's still young and understand. Like, I haven't seen Trent Williams that mad visibly on tape at someone else. I don't think ever. I don't know, Brad. Maybe can you think of another time because he knew exactly what was supposed to happen. You're not supposed to release there. It's not a chip. You have to get in there and block. Like, that's the idea, right? And I've never seen Trent Williams as visibly upset on tape. Not that he was showing him up or anything like that. He was just upset. And that's the little stuff, right? Like, that's the stuff when it comes to trust and what I trust in my play calls, what I trust against the looks that I'm getting. And that's the part that I think it's hard to take Christian McCaffrey off the field because of all the things that we just mentioned.
Yeah, no, very rare you see Trent do something like that. But obviously, it was a big moment.
Yeah.
And it was something that should have been avoided, right? So yeah, I haven't seen Trent, that upset in a while because it took a touchdown off the board, right? They
Right.
weren't able to go for 6, and obviously we know the other issues that followed. I wanted to get to this because I completely
Super
forgot
chat.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daza says Puni has been fantastic, but if we had a better RT though, we could actually pass to Kittle more as opposed to him being a 6th O line. I
Good
didn't
thing.
see Kittle. I didn't see Kittle block that much in pass protection. If
No,
I'm being
no,
honest.
he did it in this game. No. But
Yeah.
good thing the 49ers didn't draft Kingsley Suyamata.
No, seriously.
No, seriously.
Good thing.
No,
Good thing.
seriously. He's not good. He's hashtag not good.
All the concerns that I saw, like I was enamored originally with the measurables, and
Mhm.
he was like 21, and I was like, yeah, he seems like he's gonna be a guy, and you hear that he's related to Penei Sewell and all that stuff, and you're like, ooh, okay. And so I was kind of like early first impression, I was in on him. And then I only had like one game where he played half of it. And so that's my all I had of tape. And then I finally got his tape and I started digging in. I was like, oh, I was like,
What's
yeah, he's athletically gifted, but boy is technically raw in the rawest of ways, not in a good way. And you don't want to learn in the NFL. Like, you need to refine in the NFL, not learn. And that's definitely poked its head early on. And when they traded the Chiefs to take him, I was like, that also felt like kind of
right?
the
Like, why
49ers
don't the Niners
telling
want
you
him?
they were
Right.
telling you how they felt about him.
And that's the thing. Everyone wants an upgraded right tackle, but drafting any right tackle that's available isn't smart either. Because drafting for need over evaluating what you really should have is the fastest way to find yourself with a draft bust. The fastest way. Just because a right tackle was available doesn't mean that right tackle should be drafted. The other part of that is you want an upgraded right tackle, but that right tackle has to be the right guy, the guy who's actually going to be the upgrade, not just any right tackle. So,
Right.
and I'll take it a step further. I thought the 49ers wanted Roger Rosengarten, and I've been watching Roger Rosengarten, and he's struggling as well. A lot of what that offense is doing right now in Baltimore is getting the ball out quickly because they don't want to leave him out there. Like, he's having issues as well too. Now, look, let me preface what I've been like, or let me say this. Kingsley Suyamata has not played well. He's been benched twice. That does not mean that he's not going
He was
to be
benched
a
another
good football
time.
player.
I didn't know that.
Twice.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he's not going to be a good football player. But
I agree. He's 21.
But this is the exercise. We are talking about this draft class potentially being the best one during the Lynch and Shanahan era, and not one offensive lineman. Well, one offensive lineman was drafted. Not one defensive lineman was drafted. And you look at the two guys that could have been there that everyone was enamored with or linked to, and they're struggling. And it's just an exercise in, because you have a need, it doesn't mean that you have to force a square peg into, a circle, it just, because you have a need, and drafting for need is the quickest way to find yourself without a job in the front office. And at times when we saw some of the draft picks come out, we're like, damn it, not a right tackle, right? Like, not offensive lineman. We have to be a little bit more trusting of that process as well too. I'm not saying not to have an opinion. Of course, I'm not saying that at all. But what I mean is, looking at after that draft, everyone was saying, I can't believe they didn't draft Suyamata. I can't believe they didn't go for Roger Rosengarten. How did they let that? And then we look at the draft class and we're like, hit. Sometimes the draft process is imperfect. It's an imperfect science. And it is a bit of a coin flip. But at the same time, it's just, you wanna have an upgrade at the position, but you have to get him at the right spot, and he has to be an upgrade, So I think that's the hard part, like with the draft process, is just because a right tackle is available doesn't mean the 49ers need to draft him. You want an upgrade, but no, it's not any right tackle will do. And I think it's just, again, a learning process of how we go through our process as well too. When we're thinking about team needs and we're evaluating players at that position, and it helps us contextualize how you should continue to refine your process and how you should be always looking at, hey, these were my notes from this year. How do I look at this and get better? And I'm just talking about us being amateur, like draft guys could like go into the combine and stuff like that. I'm not talking about the front office. You hope the front office does it that way. But all this process stuff is just, it's fascinating because can't miss prospects bust. Guys who have no business apparently athletically being out there are stars. It's such an imperfect process. And the idea of just addressing a position because you need something and there's someone available, that's the part that's a little tricky.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a great assessment. And, for what it's worth, both Kingsley and Rosengarten are two offensive linemen that I soured on. Both of them showed inconsistencies in their tape. Roger was a little bit of a difficult one for me because
it's a McGlinchey clone.
His highlight tape was phenomenal. But as you also know, I was a huge Troy Fautanu guy. So I watched a ton of Washington tape, and he was too inconsistent for me. He would do something remarkable on one play and then look like McGlinchey on another. And I was like, and it was too consistently inconsistent. And I said, for that, I'm out. I can't. Yeah. I know enough about offensive line that it's about being consistent. Like, you can have highlight plays, but if you are too inconsistent, you are no good. You cannot help us, because on the play that we need you to be consistent and you flop and you destroy a drive, you destroy a play that we needed to have because you got beat on this particular one, but 2 plays ago you flat back someone. It's not. It's too hard. You're betting on potential at that point. And you're betting on someone having it click in the NFL, and that is so much more difficult than finding someone like Dominick Puni, who it's clearly clicked, and you're just hoping that he just continues. He just takes that next step. And so those are the difference. Like, both Roger, they showed promise Kingsley showed promise, but they were too inconsistent, and they showed too many technical issues for me, and for those reasons, I was out. And so I wasn't upset with. I was upset more so with the idea that the 49ers gave the Chiefs a tackle who could be good. Now I'm like, all right, that's fine. He looks like he's got some time to potentially be our problem for us. But
what if the 49ers allowed a ticking time bomb to fall into the Chiefs' lap?
They had him in for a visit. They knew who he was.
Stay with me here. They were never going to draft him. The Chiefs call and they say, we want to give you, and they're like, yeah, we think Kingsley's great. You guys should definitely draft him. Yeah. I don't know, man. Why would they do that? No, why would they do that?
I don't even know if I still have my tinfoil hat. I got to find it. But remember how public their workout was with Rosengarten? I was like, this don't smell right. This does not smell right. And guess who took them right before?
The Ravens. Yeah. Look, man. I think we have to start looking at this front office as a little bit of a tricky. They're a little bit.
They're some tricksters. Yeah, they're gamers. They would do it just like I would.
Yeah,
look over here.
Going on. Yeah,
look at us over here. Private workout with Roger Rosengarten.
Nope, Renardo Green. That's who we wanted. Our new starting cornerback. Get worked. It's just again. I think it's fun to go through the process again, and maybe there should be a show, maybe in the off season. When we're doing draft, content, that we can go back and we can talk about like all the way through the draft, what we were thinking about those players, and then we can evaluate them after 1 year, and we can go back and kind of, look at our notes and all that stuff, because, I think, I'm not the O-line guy, right? Like I'm not. If I'm watching guys because I know the 49ers have needs. So I did watch O-line, but like I love watching receivers, even if I know the 49ers are not going to be in position for receivers. So it's just interesting to kind of compare your notes to where they are. And then you can say, well, I was right about this. I was wrong about this. I was right about this. I was wrong about this. And then it helps you refine and what to look for a little bit further, right? And it's all about year to year being able to grow and evaluate. And again, the hardest part for us, I'm not talking about the front office, even though this is really hard. The hardest part for us is we don't get a chance to talk to these guys in depth, right? To understand where their head's at. Sure, we can go to the combine and ask them questions, right? And they're always going to give you at least a good answer, unless they're like Kayvon Thibodeau, who just hates everybody and has a poor attitude, and just like is going to say whatever. But we don't get a chance to get a feel for the person. And that could swing us one way or the other. So we're just trying to do it with film. And that's that's like one of 4 steps for the front office on how they evaluate people, right? Like, and I saw somebody in the chat say it, the Niners came out and said there was only a few players that were Niners material. And again, what does that mean? That means attitude. It means smarts. It means adaptability. And it obviously means film and everything as well, too. So their process is far different than ours, because all we have is the film to go off of. All we have is the team needs to address. All we have is just watching them play and try to give their strengths and weaknesses. But there's so much more to the process than that. So I think that would be a fun exercise next, in the off season, after the 49ers, miraculously win the Super Bowl this year. Like that, we can go back and just look at everything. Yeah. Hey man, I'm just tired of everybody saying that I'm negative, because I was frustrated with the way that the 49ers look coming out of the bye, when I expected some of those things to be cleaned up.
I mean, how can you not be frustrated with how, we've obviously focused on a lot of the positives, but I also think there were some concerns. Like we had the scuffle that happened. We had, drives that stalled that probably shouldn't have stalled. Big plays given up by the defense. Like we had like it. The thing that I wanted, and I don't know what you thought about this, but the thing that I was looking for from this particular performance out of the bye was 60 minutes of complimentary football.
Yes, my God, Brad. That
is what I want. That's it.
Is it so hard? 4 quarters. Can you give them to me? 4. So the 49ers have 5 wins. Only one of them was a laugher because no matter what that Jets score was, that game was never close, right? Every single game has been an either ugly win or ugly loss. And I want one game where pillar to post, 60 minutes, you watch the 49ers go out there and take care of business. And I think that's the part that has me just frustrated, right? You get out of the bye, you get Christian McCaffrey back, you get Juwan Jennings back. By the way, we got to talk about Juwan Jennings because there's a I mean, I've been giving this hot take, on other platforms. Yeah, yep. I want to talk all about that because there's a course correction that needs to be made by me. But 4 quarters, please put it all together. And I think the frustrating part is that there's quarters, there's drives, there's stretches of play where you're like, there it is. There's the offense. There's the defense, right? It just hasn't all come together yet. And everything right now just feels like what the 49ers are telling you through 9 games is that nothing's going to be easy. And on the heels in which of a season, everything was basically easy, right? Like was basically easy aside, you have a 3-game losing streak during the season. The 49ers basically roll everybody last year, and then in the playoffs, it gets tougher and tougher. But I don't expect blowouts in the NFL. I don't expect teams to just get rolled on. But it doesn't look like you can play a full 60 minutes 4-quarter game and lose. That's completely possible. But the 49ers haven't even done that. So it's just frustrating to see the same issues popping out a little bit. And it's just, you thought the bye week would be a time for them to get all that together. And it's just, you see stretches of play on the defense where you're like, there it is. And then obviously the last drive, it's just penalty after penalty, undisciplined play. And just, and then offense, red zone, same thing, special teams, all 3 phases, not good. Like it's just, man, when do we stop saying this is correctable and we start to believe, man, this might just be who the 49ers are in 2024. And I think that's a fair assessment. It doesn't mean that I'm projecting that to continue because, by the way, I think this is the week against Seattle that the 49ers break through in the red zone. They probably get 4 trips and they only take 1 field goal this time. They'll get 3 touchdowns. But just, it's too many of the same things. And I wonder, coming out of a bye week, if this is more who the 49ers are than it is them turning the corner. And it could be them turning the corner because we know Christian McCaffrey's ramping up. Everything's kind of coming into focus. Who's going to be here down the stretch? You've had time and everything. And, maybe what ails the 49ers is like a matchup with those trash Seahawks and beating the hell out of them could be like the elixir for the 49ers to play well. But it's frustrating, Brad. The 60 minutes thing, it's just, again, you can play 60 minutes of football and lose. You can lose a game where you play a complete game. You just lose, like the other team was just better. But we haven't even gotten that yet. And I think that's the part that is the most frustrating.
That's where my frustration drives from. It's the, being your own worst enemy, right? Like it's different if you're going out there and you're executing and you just get out executed, or you get a better scheme or something like that. It's going to volley back and forth. But it just feels like the 49ers are still kind of in their own way. They're still kind of like, when we know this team is on point, they're in rhythm. There is a rhythm to this team that I haven't felt that. We felt it
Nothing
in
looks easy.
Stretches. In
right, nothing looks easy.
Quarter. Yes, everything is very difficult to obtain. Everything is very stressful. Everything just feels like, I don't even know how to explain it. That's the hardest part.
Let me ask you this, Brad. You were in the stadium, right?
Yes.
And I want to ask you this. When that last drive is happening with the Bucs, and be honest.
Oh my God.
Did you start to say, here we go?
Oh, I thought
like
we were
that's like, here we go. Here comes another absolutely gut-wrenching win that they kicked away. Like they just absolutely kicked away, right?
So I didn't feel good that whole 4th quarter.
Right.
And this for me started week 2 against the Rams when they went up by 10. When they got inside the 10 and they kicked a field goal, went up by 10, my stomach turned. And that was the first time I ever associated, I have 10-point fourth quarter PTSD. And guess what happened in that game? The 49ers lost with a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter. So my senses felt it. I said, "Oh, they didn't score a touchdown right here." And I think we questioned like some of the aggressiveness of that moment where it felt like the moment to go score. But I we can rationalize the logic, but obviously, as you know, Jason, a lot about these games is feel for the game, like
and momentum.
Momentum. And when they did that there was a huge long drive and they get stopped. That is a win for the defense.
Oh yeah.
That is that's a boost. They just drove all the way down the field, got into the 10, and we stopped them for a field goal. That is a W. And then they start to think like, well, if we just get a score here and then we get another stop, and then that's when the momentum shifts, and they've lost multiple games that way, not only this season but in the past. And that's where I realized I have fourth quarter 10-point PTSD.
I have a hot take.
Yes.
Evan Anderson's play to stop Rachaad White and on when they're second and goal and knock them back is the biggest play of the 49ers season and probably saved their season this year right away through 10 weeks. If he doesn't get back there and knock him back for a loss, they score a touchdown, and it's very unlikely that the 49ers bounce back and get down there for a touchdown.
Right.
And it could go overlooked. It was obviously a big play in the context of it. But what I mean by that is you lose that game, for all intents and purposes, your season's cooked. And that right there was a play where, like you said, that feels like a win. But without that play, they don't win that game.
Right.
And if they don't win that game, the season's over. So Evan Anderson's play might just go down. And when we're going through the retrospective of the 49ers 2024 season, we can look at that play and say that was the play that changed everything. And that is one of the most important things. And by the way, Evan Anderson, rookie.
Right.
Rookie class.
Good point. Yeah, we didn't talk about
it. Rookie class. Just killing it all over the place. All these guys. This rookie class, incredible, man. So yeah, that's a moment that we knew in the time of the game where we're like, wow, that's huge. We may not know how huge that is until we find out how the 49ers finish out this season.
No, I actually think that's less of a hot take and more so of just a really damn good take. Like I think you're onto something with that, because honestly, if the 49ers lose that game, I've said this in a different video, the whole scuffle thing on the sideline is being talked about completely differently.
Right. Well,
that whole scuffle becomes the antithesis of the dysfunction of the season. That becomes the visual for the 49ers collapse. But because they win, oh, it's just a part of the game. They'll get over it, they'll squash it, and they'll move on. That is the difference between winning and losing. And that play that you're mentioning is huge. And again, I haven't talked about it too much, but I think the perception of that scuffle is completely different if the 49ers lose.
And what I looked at that scuffle at that time was, and we don't have to talk about it or whatever, it's squash, fine. Kyle talked about it. Yeah, it's fine. But the frustration is that is the entire team feeling like this game hangs in the balance and our season is hanging in the balance right now. And the frustration of the offense not being able to execute in the red zone and knowing that if you lose this game, you are probably not going to be able to make the playoffs. The 49ers playoff probability would have dropped at least 27% with a loss, right? And that's the frustration of it, is we know that this game is the most important game of the season. I wrote an article on Niners Nation, and I said that Bucs game is the most important game left on the schedule. Not because of the opponent, not because of the fact that you got to win almost every game now, like to make the playoffs. But that game was supposed to be the game out of the bye to show everybody, hey, we're still those guys from last season. We're ready to roll to go down the stretch. There was much more at stake for perception and kind of just the mindset of this team that has watched these games happen all season to say, enough. We're not going to let this happen again. And that feeling started to be palpable and build, and they started to feel it because they had been feeling it all week. And that's the result that you get right there. When you've lost multiple games this season, it's almost identical how the 49ers have lost these games. It's like, oh shit, here we go again.
Yeah, it's
And
all shit. Here goes the momentum. Here
Right.
it goes. Just letting it go through our hands.
And it's a special teams play that'll allow it to happen. And there's and then your defense, it's just, that was the moment that the team is letting you know, here's your urgency. Here's what we're believing, because we feel it, and we feel that this season is on the line right here in this game. And it just felt like it was tense. It felt like it was ready to pop, but that has been building for weeks and weeks, because this team, no matter how you feel about them, and I know you are what your record says, right, this team knows that they're not a 5-4 team. This team knows for a fact that they shouldn't be 5-4.
They should be 7-2.
This frustration is building, and that's what happens. It popped.
Yep, it popped, and that's why I like the way that you highlighted that play, because the original question was, how did I feel in the stadium? I was like, here we go. And I didn't feel good leading up to that series. There was a point where there was a confidence that I had, as an outside observer who, we know what we do around this team. And, you either have confidence or you have doubt. And I've never had more doubt surrounding the team. And it's not because that's what I do. I feel like both of us genuinely happen to be pretty optimistic in terms of how we view things. Obviously, we're going to be objective when it comes to calling it is what it is, which is exactly what we're doing right now. And what it is that the San Francisco 49ers aren't them. They aren't who they should be. They aren't who they know they should be. And that's why they're 5-4 and not 7-2. And who knows if they are who they should be, if they're even 7-2, they could even be better than that. And what that record showcases, because they didn't play well at all against the Minnesota Vikings. They probably could have played a lot better. Probably could have won that game if they did play better. And we'll leave the Chiefs game because that was just terrible.
Yeah, the 49ers are not.
They weren't. That was just that's not terrible game.
Well, and they're not on their level as well too. But look, I understand they have Patrick Mahomes and everything, but the Chiefs are showing you different ways to win games now. Like they can win however you want to play. Do you want to get in the mud and get it grimy? You want us to get a field goal block? Like, you can call it luck. Winning teams know how to win. Yeah. And the 49ers, at least I can say this out of the bye, while I was frustrated that they haven't played a full game together and didn't clean up many of the issues, that's a game that they would have lost before the bye, for sure. And maybe that's just a turning point. I guess that's just us being optimistic. But yeah, I mean, that should be the turning point, I think, right there when it comes to this.
To your point, we can be looking back at the end of the year and be like, Jason, remember that conversation we had where you were talking about that play and we were talking about the scuffle and how a win or a loss in that game in that moment changes the entire trajectory of the season? That could be it. It really could, because I think that is a reflection point for the entire team to look themselves in the mirror to be like, all right, who are we? Mm-hmm. Are we a team that explodes on the sideline? Are we a team that consistently,
beats
fights
themselves,
and claws and gets a lead and then loses it? Mm-hmm. Like, is this who we are? And so for them to have that game-winning drive, to be able to have Moody come out and make the kick, in which I've said I believe saved his job, because I don't know how you miss 4 kicks and potentially lose a game, and even for what they've been able to draft and whatever. So it's crazy. I do think that moment we're gonna look back at and we're gonna be like, yeah, that was a big moment.
2 other things real quick. 2 big takeaways from this is the misses are exacerbated by the fact that the red zone hasn't clicked for touchdowns. And the red zone touchdown they got was on a scramble drill. Hi, George Kittle. Thank you so much. There's your, so I don't want to talk about the misses or whatever. Like, I think I think at this point it's beating a dead horse. Like you understand where I stand with it. I
Right,
don't I don't want the guy to miss kicks. Okay, like I just
right.
again I it's not my frustration, but the microcosm of that is that the red zone you shouldn't be kicking, especially against that defense that has been giving it up to almost everybody. And then the touchdown that you get is one of those special plays, from Purdy and Kittle, and it just feels like the play call wasn't there. There's a little bit of execution still off, like with the red zone. And as the games get tougher, as the games get bigger, you're not going to beat teams with field goals. So I choose not to view the field goal thing as what it is. And I know everybody wants me to like spaz out. I'm tired, guys. Like I'm just tired. Like I don't want to think about that. But I think it's more important to look at the red zone offense and say, well, why are you guys still not executing? And what is it? Like it's just you have to find a way to fix this. And we thought it would be after the bye, and we thought it would be with Christian McCaffrey. And then one other thing, Juwan Jennings is the best wide receiver on the 49ers in 2024. I don't think it's really up for debate.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yep. Not
Definitely.
Ayuk, not Debo. Pearsall's coming along. Maybe he becomes, but Juwan Jennings playing X has got to be one of the most pleasant surprises, because I be honest, I didn't think it was possible.
We both
Because
talked about it. We didn't
yeah,
think that was his best position.
no, and it goes back to what I was saying with Pearsall about what I was impressed with on tape. Some guys win with route running. Some guys win with speed. Some guys just win. And that's what Juwan Jennings does. He just wins. He wins the routes, and then after, he's Euro stepping everybody for more yards. This has been such a revelation. And for all of us that said we think Juwan Jennings won't be around, now you know why the 49ers went out there and extended him. And thank God they did. Thank goodness they did. And again, perhaps we'll see it against different secondaries. I don't really think too highly of the Bucs secondary. But still, to see someone who we said, hey, has physical limitations to play outside of X and get himself open, to have that sort of game, and the rapport that him and Purdy have is just impeccable, man. Like it's just they're both in each other's minds, like where they want to go with the football and how they're seeing the field. Juwan Jennings has been incredible, and he's the best wide receiver on the 49ers in 2024. Even when Brandon Ayuk was playing, it was still JJ, and I think it's easy for it to be JJ going forward now.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. He's stepped into a huge role, and he's played really well. It's a huge reason why they won that game down the stretch. Jay Jurdy says O-line, D-line looks shaky, not to mention special teams. True.
Yeah.
True.
Then we have another one too. Yeah.
Daza says vibes have been off since a Super Bowl loss, effort, cohesion, off-season issues. Also, defense has regressed despite the supposed improvements after firing Wilkes.
Well, I think we all expected a defensive step back because of the new coordinator, right? And what this
Defensive
team,
line, basically.
right? New defensive line. I think we all expected that. What we expected was the secondary to be the strength, and it definitely is. We expected that. But what we also expected was the offense to be able to offset any sort of regression from the defense. And while the 49ers are ranked 4th or 5th in the league in offense, it's for total yards, essentially. And they can move the ball up and down the field. But if you're settling for field goals, all you're doing is just dominating the time of possession. Really. I mean, and I'm not just saying that's like it's nothing. Like you need to do that. But it's if the defense takes a step back, then the offense has got to step up. If the offense takes a step back, then the defense has to step up. It all goes back to complementary football. And we still haven't seen it yet. So I think we all expected the defense to take a step back, but we expected the offense maybe not to be as efficient as they were last year, because it's almost mathematically and statistically impossible to run up those types of efficiency numbers after you were tops in the league and everything. But it shouldn't be like this. And you should be able to mitigate any sort of loss on the defensive side, whether it's talent induced or scheme induced, whatever it is, by being able to still score touchdowns. And that's the part that if the 49ers offense can break through in the red zone, it can offset any sort of defensive lapses that they have. They just have to start converting touchdowns out of field goals.
I agree. I don't think I'm as disappointed in the defense as I was last year.
I am not either. And I thought they played, for the large part, a very good game. It was just the last drive that I was just like, come on.
Yeah, it was just an implosion of epic proportion, but they saved it by not allowing a touchdown. When I look at last
Hold on,
year,
real quick. I'm
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Brad. Just to Daz's point, who did we lose on defense from last year? Dre Greenlaw, Eric Armstead. Should I keep going? Like Dre Greenlaw and Eric Armstead, is that not enough? Or
Talanoa Hufanga, obviously for
yeah,
half the season.
Dre Greenlaw's not here. Like you had to
Deshaun
think that,
Gibson was the starter. He
right?
is
Like
back now.
you had to think that they were going to take a step back just by the fact Dre Greenlaw wasn't going to be there. Early in the season. We understood all this, and
Hargrave.
Hargrave for this year, but he was there last year. It's you had to think they were going to take a step back schematically because Sorensen isn't going to be the play caller right away, and I don't want to get into the Eric Armstead thing, but like losing Eric Armstead and Dre Greenlaw, that's enough, and then you have to start Devondre Campbell, and then you don't know what you're doing at safety because Gibson's not there, right?
And then you got Yadam, who's kind of
right, and then outside corner Yadam, he's out there now. You had to expect this. You had to, and I think we all did. And I think again, the way you mitigate those losses is you got to finish on offense.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think, and that gets back to the entire point of complementary football. When you're playing complementary football, you're helping each phase, and that's not what we're seeing. That's where a lot of the frustration's coming from. So, yeah, I agree. But I don't look at the defense because the defense and what I saw was happening last year was weird calls at weird times and I'm not really seeing that. It's more so maybe lack of execution or something like that, but I'm not seeing it from like where last year it was so apparent that whatever they were calling wasn't working because it was how they were playing. They're playing with 10-yard cushions on a 3rd and 5. It's like, why are you playing with a 10-yard cushion on 3rd and 5 when they would just take 3 steps, turn around, catch the ball, get a first down? And it was just over and over and over again. That to me was where I had my issues. I'm not really seeing that stuff, but we're also seeing that defensive line has been thin. Yetur Gross-Matos was supposed to be a big part of this. He's been hurt. Obviously, Sam O has stepped in. That's been great. They've had to rely on guys that they weren't really anticipating relying on because of the injuries that they've had. Malik Collins, I think, has been really good.
He has.
But there just been so many. Just think about all the moving parts on the defense.
And Jordan Elliott is playing too much. He's not supposed to be an every down guy. Right. Jordan Elliott's playing too much. Leonard Floyd, when you don't invest in the defensive line in the draft, like you're stuck going to, cheap talent, right? Like older talent. And Leonard Floyd's been fine. But this defensive line is nowhere near as formidable as it was last season, particularly in the Super Bowl. Like Armstead had 8 pressures and a sack. Like that's the time when you're looking at okay, like this is still a guy, right? Like, and regardless of whether we feel that the defense underperformed last season, particularly with pass rush, it's still not better this season than it was last season. It's just not. And I think that's the part that we all saw kind of coming, is like when you look at hey, Nick Bosa is going to be Nick Bosa. We hope Javon Hargrave can step up. Malik Collins is somebody who's brand new in this system, and Leonard Floyd's a veteran. You still got moving parts for guys that weren't here last season, and you're kind of just hoping that it all fits. But right now, after the injury to Hargrave, Elliott's playing too much. He has too many inconsistent reps. The defensive line as a whole it's not the strength of this team. And I know we thought that the secondary was going to be the strength, but not to the degree of what it is. Like, it's like the secondary is up here and the defensive line is just way down here, in terms of impact on the defense right now.
Yeah. So it is definitely something, that's for sure. Do you want to talk about concerns for the remainder part of the year?
Sure. So we kind of left this part open because we want to have an open discussion. For you guys that don't know, I write for NinersNation.com. Don't kill me. I didn't name the website. It's called NinersNation.com. I just can't wait for all the comments. I can't believe you said it's Niners Nation. It's where I work. I have no bearing on it. But I wrote an article about, and you guys can check it out. And I think Brad's going to put it up on the screen. But we run a poll every Wednesday, courtesy of FanDuel Sportsbook. And we gauge the 49ers fans' confidence in the team going forward. And we have a survey question. This week's survey question was, what is going to be the 49ers' biggest issues and challenges in the second half? Obviously, the biggest issues are going to be beating their opponents. Obviously, right?
Yes.
But we have 3 right here that we're yeah, see, Sean, I knew it. I knew I was setting myself up. The 3 issues that are going to be the biggest going down. And again, we didn't put opponents because I think that's the elephant in the room, is that you still have to win the games. But we're talking about issues that the 49ers can either control or that are something outside of that. So the first one is special teams. And I'm not going to talk about what you want me to talk about. You already know how I feel. So the problem with this is, and I want to talk about this just a little bit like more in depth, and that's why I didn't really go into it about the Bucs game. The problem is this. Under Kyle Shanahan, this group has consistently underperformed. And the funny part is the 49ers just need to be an average special teams group, not the 31st worst group or 31st best group, however it is, in the league. And for a franchise, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to pick some scabs here. For a franchise that has watched their season go up in smoke, sorry, Kyle Williams, I don't want to bring that up. You know, even last season in the Super Bowl, how identical was that play with Darrell Luter to what happened in the Super Bowl with that punt with Ray McCloud? How identical, right? Almost like the same exact play. And then on the flip side, the 49ers have literally moved on because of a special teams play. Because the Packers were worse at it after Jordan Willis gets in there and puts his hand up. My point is it's been 5 years of this with special teams. And I love Kyle Shanahan, but I have to ask Kyle Shanahan this. Either you're coaching it or you're letting it slide. And that, I don't know what's worse. It almost feels like every single time the special teams is on the field, that is the first time that they've ever been in this situation, whether it's fielding a punt, whether it's punting and getting back and trying to cover. I don't even need them to be a top 10 unit. They just need to be average. But it feels like, I don't know what's worse. You coaching it or you letting it slide. And for a team that has watched their heart get ripped out on special teams plays, I don't understand why this isn't more of an emphasis and you understanding that this can be something that can kill your whole season, no matter how good you are on offense and defense.
This is always an interesting dilemma, right? Because when we talk about coaching, it's like the only way you really know that answer is if you're in the building. The only way you know is if you are on the team. Like you can then from that point be able to evaluate, all right, our coach sucks. Like obviously we can try to evaluate coaching from the outside, but you really can't because you don't know what they're responsible for. If they're coaching it up exactly how it needs to be coached, but they don't have the players to execute, yeah, it's going to fall on the coach's feet as his responsibility, but he's not playing. He's not executing. So that's always been my pushback on like, oh, fire the special teams coach, because the 49ers have already done that. They already fired Hightower. They already moved on. Like this is a consistent thing. And when they fired Hightower, I was like, to me, what I'm seeing is it seems more indicative of the 49ers having lack of back end depth that you need to field your special teams unit. And the constant injuries that they have means you're constantly revolving those special teams player. You don't have a lot of consistency on special teams. They obviously went out and get George Odom to, be a special teams player. They go out and get Demetrius Flanagan, or they have Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who's a special teams player. But
Nick McCloud was brought in. Nick McCloud was brought in as a special teamer as well.
Yeah,
too, so maybe that helps.
I mean, Is it coaching that Jake Moody missed 3 field goals? Like,
No.
I don't have the answer. Like,
Mhm.
that's why for me, especially with the special teams part of it, I know it's really easy to point
Mhm.
to Schneider and be like, yeah, it's Schneider's fault. Like, get him out of here.
Mhm.
But we've seen it now through 2 coaches through how many years?
Mhm.
And it's like, is that really the issue? Are we gonna fire Schneider and bring in someone else? And oh, look, we have the same issues. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a special teams player. I never
Mhm.
played special teams. I'm not a specialist. I don't know. Like, or that's not a lie. I've played special teams, but as a primary role, you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Like a
Like,
core special teamer.
right, I've never been a core special teamer. I've played special teams, but I've never been a
Mhm.
core. Like, that's where all you do pretty much. So, like, I don't know. Like, they practice it every day. They run
Mhm.
through the drills. Like, so I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't sit here and tell you like what the reasoning is, but it's like with Daryl Luter, you can't get close to your returner. You can't do that. So to me, that's a individual error more so than, oh, how dare the coach, tell his guy to go down there and get that close to the returner. They
Mhm.
should know that. Like,
Right.
that's day one stuff, right? So how are we gonna point to that miscue and be like, oh, well, that's on the special teams coach. Jake Moody missed those kicks. That's on the special teams coach. Like, they got a huge return on kickoff and the guy was out of his rushing lane. My favorite was against I think it was the Chiefs. Ronnie Bell trips onto his face and they run right off where he was supposed to be. Is that the special teams coach fault? And like, that's just my pushback to that
Yeah.
notion.
And I don't think that. I mean, again, I don't think I'm advocating for somebody else to come in here because I think it's too late in the season, regardless. Like, it's too late. Like,
I'm
we
not
can't.
saying you are. I'm saying
Oh, no, I know. But
fans
what
are.
what I'm saying is, I don't think the 49ers have had good special teams for like the last 15 years.
I can't remember the
Even
last
with
time the
even with
49ers had. You mentioned it. You said his name.
Kyle Williams,
That
and
was
that's
Harbaugh.
2012. That was 2012, right?
Like,
Like,
I can't.
and the last time the last time the 49ers had a punt return was 2012 in Ted Ginn. But
Last
I will
time they
say
had a
this,
kick return was
Richie James.
2019, Richie
Richie
James
James.
against the Bucks.
So what's funny is all the talk about special teams and obviously the muff punt and all that stuff, and you guys can, talk amongst yourselves with, the elephant in the room. But Jacob Cowing did make a really, really, really important play in this game with his 31-yard return on a punt. I have a hard time right now just figuring out why is it that this continues to happen, coordinator after coordinator, and again, it's not even regimes that Kyle Shanahan's responsible for. But it's frustrating for the 49ers to know that their season has been lost on the back of special teams gaffes. And they've also moved on because they were better than the Green Bay Packers. They didn't score an offensive touchdown in that game, and they moved on to an NFC championship. That's how small the margins are on special teams. And
Right.
it's down to minute details and execution, but it's been how many years of it? And I think that's where the frustration boils down to because, you know, special teams doesn't have an impact on the game when you're blowing people out. But when you're playing as many games as close as the 49ers are, and it always feels like there's one special teams play that always opens the door again. And it happened again in Tampa Bay, again with the Darrell Luter, it hitting him. And then what happens? The Bucks go in and score. It's frustrating because you can lose seasons in which you have a great offense and defense. A special teams gaff could let everybody in, and then all of a sudden your season's over. So it's just that's got to be a concern. I don't know if it's the top concern because we have two other topics to talk about, but that's got to be high up on the list one way or another.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what the issue is. Like, there's clearly an issue. They're one of the worst units in the NFL.
There's only one unit worse, which I couldn't believe that when I looked it up. I was just like, how was that possible?
Right. And so, but that responsibility falls with the coach, right? So
Yeah.
it is what it is. He's ultimately going to be on the chopping block for his unit's performance. But I don't know. Like, I can't put my finger on it. I can't sit here and say like, yeah, it's 100% Schneider, because how do you determine that? What are you actually referencing to determine that his guys aren't executing because he's coaching it improperly, because he's putting them in the wrong position? That's when I say, that's why I didn't like Wilkes, because I felt like he was putting the defense in bad positions and they were losing because they were out of position. That felt like a Steve Wilkes issue. The issues with the defense this year seem like they have some holes at some spots. They're weak with some depth. I'm not seeing this. I think they've improved with situational football and in those areas. So that to me is an improvement in coaching, not a step back. So again, it's how you perceive it, how you view it, how you look at it. But that's just how I look at it. So when I'm seeing execution errors, obviously that is also right. That why is this happening? Are you coaching it that way? Like, I don't know. I don't. I wish I knew. I think we all wish we knew. But just a quick point on special teams before we go to the next one was, man, when you look, we did reference the Harbaugh era, but because of singular execution errors. When we remember the Harbaugh era, it was the Tony Montana squad. They had Delaney Walker out there, Boobie Dixon. They had key core special teamers. They had, I know he was a good special teamer. He's not a good person. Bruce Miller, Costanzo, like all those guys were just key special teamers. They were core special teamers, and that's why they had that aura. That's why they had that vibe. They had guys to get the job done, and it just feels like they don't have those guys. They don't have, and if they do, it's these guys that are getting called up from the practice squad, or they're like constantly rotating back end depth because they have such high end core players that the depth at the bottom, who those guys typically play special teams, aren't as good. So is that a roster construction issue? Is that a coaching issue? Is it both? Is it, I don't know. That's the way that I look at it. I think there's just a revolving door with this back end depth. And because of that revolving door, that is going to be an issue for any group, keyword on group, that has to play together. If you're changing in guys in and out, one guy plays out of his lane, one guy does the wrong thing, it changes the whole complexion of the unit. So I'm not breaking down special teams, so I don't have any tape reference of that. But
me neither. I don't watch that stuff. I don't watch that crap.
So next one was injuries, right?
Yeah. And injuries is an interesting one because off of the bye, getting Christian McCaffrey and Jawan Jennings back is huge. And then obviously Jonathan Feliciano is going to provide valuable depth, just in case. But the 49ers, going into week 11, are probably one of the healthier teams in football, even with Brandon Ayuk being injured. So injuries you can't predict. Injuries are something that just they're going to happen if they do, But what if the 49ers injury bug was taken care of early? Like, I know I joked about it early in the season, in which I said, oh, well, the 49ers are playing 4D chess by getting all their injuries out of the way early so they can be ready to go and roll. But I'll tell you this, I don't think they can afford another high impact injury at any position going down the stretch. Injuries is the weirdest one because it's not something you can predict, you can quantify, you can say, oh, it's going to happen, because it just happens whenever it does. But we have to talk about this because it is a possibility. So we've laid out what special teams is, what the problem is. And by the way, when we're done, laying out all three and our arguments for it, we'll run a poll, and I'd love for you guys to jump in and just, and give us your thoughts on what you think, and it'll be in the chat. But injuries can cost anybody the season, can cost anyone their chance, right? Again, it's not something that you can quantify and say it's on the way, or, we have this and this and this. Luckily for the 49ers right now, heading into week 11, they're probably one of the healthier teams in the NFL because the injuries have been incredible across the NFL. I don't remember a year where it was like this to so many impact players. But yeah, you can't talk about challenges down the stretch without mentioning injuries.
Yeah, I mean, go back to the 49ers 2002 season. Why didn't they go to the Super Bowl? Injury.
Yeah.
So, to me, injuries is always going to be at the top of the list.
Yeah.
You know, I think I've said it now, what I feel like a broken record, but I feel like the only thing that's stopping the 49ers from going all the way is the 49ers and injuries.
Right.
And when I say the 49ers, it's all the things that we've talked about. Lapses on special teams, lapses on defense, lapses on offense, letting momentum slip. That's an individual, that's them. They can control those things by better execution, by making sure that they pull the right levers in the right moments. Easier said than done, right? Always going to be easier said than done. But that's just been ever since 2019, obviously the outlier year. But I've always felt that way. I've always felt that it's up to the 49ers to lose. And if they're healthy, they'll have every opportunity. And if they don't do it, it's probably because they didn't execute, or because they made an error, or they made a mistake and they didn't do what they should have done. Because I believe in this team. That's how much I believe in them as a staff, as a roster. I do believe they have what it takes. But man, you got to get out of your own way at the same time, and you got to be healthy. That's an unnegotiable, right? Right. You got to be healthy. You start losing guys. What are you replacing them with?
Right.
So you lose a star offensive lineman. What are you replacing them with? You lose Brandon Ayuk. Thankfully, the 49ers, not unfortunately, I would say fortunately, had, I wouldn't even call it foresight, like they were preparing for it, but they had drafted a first-round wide receiver.
Proactive, not reactive.
Yeah, so they're insulated for that injury. So they can survive it because they also have Juwan, they have Debo, and they got a first-round rookie who is looking to be worth the draft selection. So they can survive that. But again, man, the injuries are always going to be a huge thing.
Yeah. And again, that's something that it's probably out of the 49ers hands, right? But it is something that has to be baked into, range of outcomes and how this season can play out. Unfortunately, I don't like talking about injuries because it's just almost like a Candyman type thing. You keep saying Candyman.
It's a variable that you can't project.
Right, and you keep saying it, and it'll pop its head out, right? So like it's something that I don't want to. Yeah, it's like Candyman. Like I don't want to keep saying it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
but yeah, it's not something that you can project. It's not something that you can. I mean, you can try to prepare for it, but if it comes for you, it comes for you, and you just gotta move. But fortunately, the 49ers do look to be one of the healthier teams in Week 11, and you know what? We'll take our wins where we can get them. So let's just cross our fingers and. Coming off a season where the 49ers had incredible injury luck, although they didn't have it in the Super Bowl with the Dre Greenlaw injury, it looks like they've kind of treaded water, if that's even a word, enough where, they can get out of the bye. It seems like they left that game with no real injuries aside from maintenance from those other guys. Just got to hope that continues, but they can ill afford another injury at an impact position.
Yeah, I agree. So injuries is always going to be a big issue for sure.
Right. So the third one is intangibles, and intangibles is a loaded response. It's discipline, it's execution, it's mental mistakes. It's all those things. I would probably say that this is lower on the worry scale for me, if that's even a word, whatever. Because the 49ers have been here before. And they've been in great, big, huge games, and they've found a way to leave, whether that's, with wins, away, home, whatever. The culture's there. And the leaders, it seemed like were trying to step up, but they were trying to fight each other and everything as well, too. But I think the things that could be corrected are the discipline things. And that's what I was talking about with the last drive with Tampa Bay. And I trust the core, the culture, the leadership to be able to overcome that. Now, the biggest concern with intangibles is still the red zone. That's it. I said it before. I think we all thought that Christian McCaffrey returning was going to be the special sauce and just, and push this team, over. But I mean, 10 weeks, 9 weeks is just, it hasn't clicked. And the 49ers, we expected a drop off again when it comes to red zone because they were so good last year. They were so good. They had a nice number of 69% touchdowns heading into the red zone. They're nowhere near that now. So you expect a dip, but not a complete collapse. So out of the bye, you think that they probably have figured this out. Christian McCaffrey is definitely going to help, and Christian McCaffrey wasn't held back in any way. But red zone has got to be in this loaded answer of intangibles has to be the most concerning thing. I am not as concerned with them being disciplined. I am not as concerned with them, being the moment being too big, right? Especially, going down the stretch. But the red zone, man, that's got to get cleaned up. And I believe too much in this team. And even when Christian wasn't here, we felt like they still should be putting in touchdowns more. I have too much faith in Kyle Shanahan and this talent for them to be this bad. But again, when someone's trying to tell you who they are, maybe we should listen. So I don't know, I think that's the biggest concern because you're not going to win games with field goals. So the red zone is the biggest part that I'm worried about with intangibles.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that obviously it feels like the intangible aspect is kind of what's, I don't know, flowed into the season from the off season and you're dealing with the loss and obviously just crazy situations, off the field. Yeah, it's biggest concern is probably intangible, I would say. Injuries to me, I think, is always there. So that to me, I'm going to actually just kind of put off to the side. Special teams, I think you can overcome with good offense and defense because you're not putting your special in on the field as much. You're not putting them in those moments to have to make plays or have to not make mistakes, we should say. So I would say, yeah, the biggest concerns are the intangible aspect because they still seem to have issues with that. Like, for example, Brock. I actually find the conversation about Brock Purdy's performance interesting because he threw for over 350 yards, 2 touchdowns, and made some really big plays. He was really off in the first half. And it's interesting because I felt like he was more off in the first half of that game than he was against Arizona, and he was getting killed for his game against Arizona. And I'm sitting here trying to sit back and think about how people perceive games and understand games. And I'm just like, okay, well, he didn't have any turnovers, so that was probably a part of it. But when you looked at the turnovers, it was like, oh, an unlucky tip pass, and he got hit on a blitz he didn't see. But somehow he got raked over the coals for that performance, which I think that you can make the case from a consistency standpoint was a little bit more consistent in that game than he was in this game. But in this game, everyone's like, oh, he's back. Or I was like, and I found it refreshing hearing what Debo said about how he wasn't happy with his performance. And I'm like, okay, that matches kind of where I'm at. And I love Brock. I love what he brings to the table. We already know that. But when we're evaluating individual performances, he was missing to the sideline consistently.
Yeah.
Whether it was Ricky, whether it was Jawan, it was behind, it was too far out in front, he was off. There was something that was off. He got it back on track coming out of halftime, and he started doing what he needed to do. And he started making plays, and he started hitting his throws. And, you had a little bit of, you had the fumble. That was just an unlucky play. He got the ball hit out. But he performed much better in the second half. But I'm like, man, he had more missed throws in that game against the Bucks than he did against Arizona, and people were killing him for that Arizona performance. So I'm just like, is it because they won? Is it because he had stats? Is it because he had no interceptions? I don't know. So I don't even know how I got onto that point, but I think at the end
I
of
think
the
it's execution. It's execution is what you're talking about.
execution and consistency is really
Right.
what it is. And that's an
Right.
intangible quality, right? That's
Right.
that's what it
100%.
comes
And
down to.
that's the thing is I probably have more of a confidence in them figuring that part out. But the red zone, it's just like I'm nervous about that because the same issues are popping up. Now, I will say this to give you a breath of positivity and everything is I do believe that this is the week that the 49ers play a close game with the Seattle Seahawks, closer than it would, you'd like to. But I think if the 49ers get 4 trips to the red zone, they're probably going to convert on 3 and you start to turn that corner a little bit because there's no better opponent to do this for than with Seattle.
Mhm.
But I have more confidence that they can get that execution part ready and they can do all those things. But I think you sit here and you think, well, is this going to be who they are? And I just have a tough time with that. I'm
Yeah.
going to post a poll right now. I'm going to post a poll right now so you guys can vote on it and then we'll check how it looks, when it's done. So I'll do that now.
So I agree that, there's concerns to be had. And but nothing like getting back on track with the win against Seattle, right? That's what it comes down to. And
I think that's definitely going to happen.
And I think so too. And I think what I'm again interested in is finding the rhythm for not an offense, not just the defense, not just special teams, all 3 phases, all 3 units working together in unison to be able to get things done. And that's been my number one gripe and continues to be my number one gripe. And the best part about that is that you cure that with execution and consistency, right? So the issues that we have been seeing have come down to those 2 things and lack thereof. So if you can get these things back on track, you can absolutely turn your season around and turn the way they're playing around. That's the crazy part about it because it feels like this season is a little bit inverted to what last season was because last year they were so hot, so fast, playing such good complementary football, and then they hit that skid. And then they got it back on track after that 3-game loss coming out of the bye, and then they ran into the Ravens, and then it was just like just win games, right? It wasn't to that point where it was like what we saw at the beginning of the season. It was just win games. It's going to be a little disjointed. It's going to be a little bit rocky, but we're going to come out with the win. Even in the playoff games, totally disjointed, but they came out with the wins because they were able to withstand the storm, which is an intangible quality, and they were able to keep attacking, executing, and taking advantage of the momentum swings. So they can do that. That's the thing. Is like we talk about all this stuff. It's like, because that's the nature of what we do when we talk about these sports for a living. But they're still in a good spot. There's still tons of opportunities for the year left. I mean, the opportunities and windows are shrinking, but they are still in a position to be able to figure it out, to be able to have it all click. And I think they just like Purdy says, man, just get back to playing the game. Take the outside noise and pressures of it off of it. Like, just remember you've been playing this game for years. You're good at what you do, and just live within that. Don't worry about social media. Don't worry about the talking heads. Don't worry about the content creators. Don't worry about anything else and all the noise and everything that comes along with it. Just play your game. Go out there and play within yourselves. And if they can do that, then they're a good team. They should be able to win these games. So that's the way I look at it.
I think that's why I have more confidence in them being able to figure it out, just because they've done it before. And they are too talented to play this way. So yeah, I call me an optimist, homer, whatever it is. I just think that that's the part that I think I'm relying on, and perhaps it's me relying on the past. But when you look at this team, it's just they're too talented, man. Like they're too well coached. They're too like they've done too much together for this season to just come apart with them just forgetting how to play football, or forgetting how to execute. But again, the sample size is really long. It's 9 games. There's 8 left. And that's just how it is right now through the poll. Intangibles is ahead over special teams, 67 to 33%. Nobody seems to be worried about injuries, which is good. And I didn't mean to worry you with that, but I did, have to throw that in there because it was a part of the article and everything as well too. And for anybody who's interested, once the results come out Friday, I'll write the follow-up article to see where everybody voted on NinersNation.com. So you can go there as well too, check out the article and vote there as well too. But I just one thing is not in your power, injuries. I think another thing's in your power to try to help fix, which is special teams. And then intangibles, I know for a fact is in your power. And I just have more confidence in them fixing that more than the special teams. So I'm going to go with special teams being the more troublesome thing and the thing that I'm worried about the most. The reason that I'm not choosing intangibles is because intangibles for me, the thing that I'm more worried about is red zone execution. And while it hasn't been great, I still think that there's a chance for that to change. Everything else, I think, will be course corrected. But special teams, I've watched too many games, too many big games be lost on the back of special teams. And you can't help but think that this is probably the worst special teams unit under Kyle Shanahan. So I'm going to go with special teams. What do you think, Brad?
I hear the way you're contextualizing it. You're basically saying I think they can fix the intangible aspect, whereas the special teams might be a little bit more challenging, which is why you're landing on special teams. That makes sense to me. I see that. Yeah, I see your point there. I do think they can turn this around. I do think they can fix those things. And yeah, special teams might be a little bit more challenging because to me, I do believe the depth is a big reason why we're seeing what we're seeing. So you're not going to be gutting out your back end of your roster. You might be adding little pieces here or there, but it is what it is. You got the guys that are on your roster. Now go out and win with them.
So what do you think? What do you think is the biggest challenge for the 49ers out of the 3? I'm not letting you leave without giving an answer.
If I'm giving an answer, it's going to be injuries to me.
Injuries?
Because
okay.
Because if you correct the intangible, that to me corrects a portion of the special teams. So those two have a tie.
They're going to go hand in hand.
So if you are injured, though, you're not fixing the special teams because you're losing your depth because everyone bumps up, right? And so you're now relying on guys that you don't even want to rely on. And then, yeah. And if you have injuries, there's no amount of intangibles that fix anything because just go see the 2022 NFC Championship game for an example of what having injuries can do, regardless of the intangibles of that team, because they were destined for greatness, but injuries derailed that. So if you're going to put me on the spot, I'm saying injuries.
Okay. Right now it's 50-50. Special teams and intangibles. Nobody in the chat is worried about injuries. And I like that. That's good. I don't want to be the lone wolf. You guys with that. Yeah, but I thought that would be a good exercise just because obviously, look, everyone's going to say win games, right? Like, what's the biggest challenge? Well, winning as many games as possible. Yeah, but there's context to that. There's a way to get to the wins. What's going to happen? Is it based on opponents? Is it based on how you're executing? All those things. And that's why, we kind of got to this question of the week. And I just thought it would be interesting to talk with you guys about it and kind of explain a little bit where I was coming from when I wrote the article. It's not up to me to convince you. It's just it's up to me to make cases for either or, and then you guys do the voting. So I always like those Wednesday survey questions because they're kind of eye opening, and it's interesting to find out how many fans or Niners Nation's readers feel the same way that I do, or just think I'm a complete idiot. So it's always eye-opening and pretty cool.
Well, we know that there are no shortage of opinions around San Francisco 49ers football. and content creators, for that matter. So it is what it is. And, hey, hopefully the 49ers figure it out.
We got injuries with 10% now. So I'm gonna let's see. I'll leave it up for 10 minutes. You want to stay on for 2 more minutes? We want to do we want to do some fantasy questions while we wait and see what this poll looks like?
Yeah, if you guys want to drop any fantasy questions, feel free to drop them in the chat.
This is an important time right now for a lot of fantasy football teams. Some people are teetering on not making the playoffs. Some people are teetering on, like a playoff run. Who should be trading for? Like this, everybody's trade deadline, I believe, is this week.
Do you have any team that is like
bottomed out?
Like a really good record?
Oh, yes, I do. It's my dynasty team. No surprise, George Kittle's on it. I had Brandon Ayuk and Rashee Rice, unfortunately. But when you have Saquon Barkley and like DJ Moore and Tank Dell, even though DJ Moore hasn't been doing too much, I've had enough. And George Kittle, the number one tight end in football, in fantasy football and football, by the way. But yeah, that's a good one, and it's a dynasty league that I've made the championship the last 2 years and won one. Let me look at that.
Doing really well in one dynasty league.
I'm 7-3 in that league. Other than that, I'm like 5-5 everywhere else.
I'm 5-5 or in the absolute gutter in other leagues, which is crazy because last year I would say 80 to 90% of my leagues we made the playoffs. So it's such a weird year, like how that works, right? Like I felt like everything was hitting. Like everything was going well last year. This year it's like the polar opposite. Just absolutely devastated. I have a ton of Olave. I have a ton of Ayuk, a ton of Nick Chubb. So that right there pretty much tells you how my life's going.
While we're waiting for the questions and everything, we actually have a few or one or two. But special teams won by 62% in the poll. That's the biggest concern with our viewers right now. So look at that. We agree. Zay or Jawan? Jawan. I like he's gonna be the starting X. He's gonna be out there every single snap. Even last week, leading the team in receiving. This isn't even a homer pick. I think if Jawan Jennings was floating around on your waiver wire, he could be a sneaky league winner. Especially if he just stays healthy.
He's probably picked up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people that held on to him.
Yeah, people did drop him though.
He was on the waiver wire in one of my dynasty leagues.
Zay, so or is this
Zay? Oh, Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers, yeah. So the reason that I'm gonna lean Jawan Jennings is with Zay, it's not been as explosive, and when it's Henry and Lamar at the crux of this offense, Rashad Bateman is a lot better than people are giving him credit for. When you watch this offense, it just feels like it's going through Henry and Lamar, and you're just not getting the big plays from Zay, man. Like I think Jawan Jennings gives you a safe floor and a high ceiling every single week that he plays.
Zay is very volatile. 7.4 last week, 33.7 the week prior, then 20.5, then 4, then 24, 21, 2, 5, 22, 11. So he's boom. He's a boom guy.
If we're talking about what you want to do this week or going forward, I think it's very much matchup dependent, but I do think that Jawan Jennings has a bigger stranglehold on this passing offense, especially given the Ayuk injury and where he's playing as X, man. Like it just feels like the smart money on the floor is there, but if you need that super boom week, I don't know if that's what you're going to get from Jawan Jennings. But if you're talking about a wide receiver 2 that you need that's going to be stable, a wide receiver 3, a high-end wide receiver 3, then I think it's got to be Jennings.
I think I'm going to go Zay on this one. I think I'm going to take, because I do think he will get targets, and I think you also run into a boomer bust or feast or famine situation with targets with Jawan. And obviously, if they have, is it Woolen? No, who's the
Bateman?
Oh, no,
Tariq Woolen.
Quarterback for Seattle.
Tariq Woolen. I'm not as worried about that as I would have in past years, especially.
It'll be interesting to see. No, that's who's their main guy.
Witherspoon.
Witherspoon. If Witherspoon goes against Jawan and those guys match up, that I would move away from, just to be able to get Zay versus Pittsburgh. And Zay did get 83% of the snap share last week, 6 targets the week prior, 12 targets the week prior to that. So I'm probably going to lean, especially if it's PPR, I'm probably going to go Zay.
I'll go with Juwan this week, and I guess screw me, right, Brad? You're just gonna disagree with me or whatever. But I think
we'll have
we'll come back to this
wager. Yes,
right. Yeah, we'll come back to this.
Bet you
a penny, cool, or $1, like in Trading Places.
Yeah. Nico Collins, Najee Harris.
Nico Collins, he's ready to go. I know that's a Monday night game, but Dallas is so banged up and they're terrible. And CJ Stroud desperately needs him to come back. Najee saw a little bit of a changing of the guard with Jaylen Warren. So I hope you guys kind of picked him up this weekend, Jaylen Warren, or picked him up yesterday. Jaylen Warren handled a lot of the work. I just feel like, and another reason, and this kind of goes back to what I'm talking about with Zay Flowers, I just feel like that Baltimore-Pittsburgh game is going to be ugly. It's going to be gritty. There's not going to be a lot of points. It's going to be like just beat them up AFC North, type game, because the Steelers are playing well and they just knocked off the commies. So yeah, give me Nico Collins. He definitely needs CJ Stroud definitely needs him. And you had Nico Collins when he was the leading receiver in football. I don't know how, when he's ready to go, you can bench him, because you can't sit there and look at you got to play Nico.
You got to go Nico. That's one easy one for us to agree on. Drop or IR Olave? I would IR.
I'd IR him. Yeah, just to see. I mean, look, it sounds like it's going to be a 4-week thing, but we know how these concussions are, and he's had so many. So there is a world where he doesn't come back this season, but too valuable to let go. If you can afford the IR, if you can afford the IR spot, like if you can afford the IR spot,
obviously Dynasty you're keeping. You're just going to put him.
Oh, Dynasty, yeah, you just put him on IR.
If it's redraft, I'm still keeping him, because he's still, especially with Shaheed out for the season.
Well, MVS now is literally what he
crazy,
like, what
right?
is going on, man?
Crazy.
Like, dude, yeah.
Chase Brown or David Montgomery?
Francisco, both of them. So look,
yeah,
Chase Brown is a PPR machine, because the Bengals don't run the football. Their extension of the run game is just throwing him the football. And Zach Moss is out for the season. And then obviously they bring in Khalil Herbert, but he goes in there for one snap, falls over, and they're just like, get him out of there. We put in Chase Brown back. Obviously he'll be up to speed a little bit more. By the way, that Thursday game was electric. What a fun time. I mean, let the Bengals and Ravens play 12 more times, please, and put it on every Thursday night game. But you got to try to play both, man. You really have to try to play both. If there's a flex spot, you can't take away David Montgomery, although Montgomery is going up against, if I'm not mistaken, because it's Dallas, it's Detroit. Why can I think? Because I have Jacksonville. Yeah. You got to play both. I think you have to play both, especially if it's PPR.
Yeah, Montgomery, Chase Brown's cooking, so I agree. You got to figure out how to get them both into your lineup. And
it's going to take some tough decisions somewhere else.
But if it was one or the other, I might go Chase Brown.
I think Chase Brown is the PPR machine, because Montgomery's going to come off the field.
He's TD dependent, and Chase Brown had 11 targets last week.
Yeah, so, and that's how they run the football.
Yeah. So, and he's getting all the snaps right now. So, if you had to pick, I would probably go Chase Brown.
Yeah, and some other advice now, after your trade deadline and everything, and you get past your bye weeks, anybody that is not going to be starting for you and it's kind of just clogging up your roster, drop them for a handcuff. Take a lottery ticket handcuff and just put them on your bench. Just like if you're there or whatever, and let's see, if Tank Bigsby's on the waiver wire because he got dropped because he got hurt, put him on your roster if you have an open spot, because if Etienne goes down, there's your lottery ticket to getting another running back. I think at this point of the season, we all kind of know who we're playing week to week. And especially when bye weeks are over, you're just going to set your lineup every single week the same way. Lottery ticket handcuffs are the way to go. If you're just going to have, if you're going to have, who's a middling, if you have, Jalen Tolbert on your roster, drop him. Like that offense is going to be awful, right? Yeah, he was good, for you for some weeks with Dak Prescott, but that's just a roster clogger. I'd rather take a shot on a high-end lottery ticket. Yeah. Oh my God. Francisco Nova has Bijan, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, and David Montgomery. Here's your advice, Francisco. If you're feeling like you're lacking somewhere else, package one of them. Package one of them in a trade. I traded for Deebo
Something
Samuel.
tells me he's pretty high up in his standings.
He better have a bunch of wins. I traded for Deebo Samuel before this Tampa Bay game because I just thought that they were going to pepper him over and over. Didn't exactly work out, but hey, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Hey, can't win them all, man.
Yep.
Francisco does say he is leaning Jennings now. I would listen to Jason. Jason's always on point with this fantasy advice. So
just degenerate. It's just being a degenerate. That's it.
So as last one,
Let's see.
Should he drop Jordan Mason?
In the same way that I was talking about high-end handcuffs, there's no higher-end handcuff than Jordan Mason, but I had to drop him, unfortunately, because I am dead at receiver. Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson's nothing now. DJ Moore's giving me nothing. I had Tyreek Hill. I had to, unfortunately. I would try my best to hold on to him. I don't want him to be the bell cow again because obviously we know what that means. But this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying high-end, high-end handcuffs, right? Like just guys who, if Bijan goes down, you have Tyler Algier already. If Aaron Jones goes down, you have Ty Chandler and you have Cam Akers. A lot of people were picking up Cam Akers, right? Like, if Jonathan Taylor goes down, you have 49ers legend Trey Sermon already, right? Like, I guess the best way to look at it is just whoever it is that you feel like is just clogging up your roster, you feel is unplayable. And again, I want you to do this after the trade deadline, explore as many options as you can, and then make sure that the bye weeks are over. But there's nothing wrong with picking up, high-end handcuffs and stashing them on your bench and just seeing what happens. Like, how many people, went into the season with, Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard. Now Chuba's taking over and everything as well, too. Like, he's like third in the league in rushing, so it's getting down to the point of the season where it's like, if I have an empty roster spot or if I have a hole in my roster where it's just like, this guy's never going to play, then yeah, I'm taking a shot. How are you 4-6, Francisco? See, this is fantasy. This is fantasy. That's fantasy football in a nutshell. Let me give you my worst team. And it's in a league with Faraz, right, Brad?
Yeah.
Fantasy Guru and all those guys, they definitely know what they're talking about, okay? I am 1-8. 1-8. So you say to yourself, Jason, you probably drafted a trash team and you really don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I'm 1-9. Forget that. 1-9. Check this team out. Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, Jalen Waddle, Anthony Richardson, who's back, by the way. Now, you think that's fantasy gold. Look at all those, and it's a 3-wide receiver league. Like, how could you go wrong with Justin Jefferson and Waddle's gonna be great? And yeah, worst team I've ever had. 1-9 is embarrassing, man. And it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter how much you crush the draft. It's out of your hands. Like every week, I just look up, and the team across from me has scored their highest point total of the season. Oh, they're just going off. Like I'm easily first in points allowed, and I'm like, how did I allow the points? I'm just sitting on the couch. I didn't do anything. I was like, do I need to make an adjustment?
Oh man, that's probably the like for me in one of my leagues that I'm fighting. I think the 2 out of the last 3 weeks, I've lost 2 of the games by combined like maybe 1.5 points.
Yep, I've lost a bunch of decimal games.
I needed those two wins to like be in the thick of it, and it's like it just knocked me down. I'm like, all right, well there goes that shot. Now I just need to win out to even have a chance to sniff the playoffs. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Look, Rodrigo, it's too late to make a coaching move in the middle of the season like this, man. We just got to ride it out, man. Like it's like the only good thing that happens like in one dynasty league, I'm not competing at all, right? Like I've got core pieces, but I just don't have the team to compete. Like I have like Drake May and I have CJ Stroud as my quarterbacks. But being like 1-9 means you're going to get the first pick. But in redraft, when you're 1-9, it just means that everybody mercilessly kills you. Oh my God. And I think there's a last place punishment. Last year we made a guy eat the one chip, the hot chip or whatever. Oh, I'm cooked. Oh, I'm leaving the country.
Oh no.
Oh, that's it.
I don't know if I could do that. I would.
I did it. I tried a little piece. It wasn't fun.
I'm not good with spice, so I would get cooked.
It was bad. I had to drink milk.
Oh, anyways, good show. A lot. We talked about a lot, and I think we got to the bottom.
It's been a while though, Brad.
I know it has. But we got. I think the 49ers figured out. I think we know what the issues are. I think we know where they need to get corrected. And it comes down to the things that you had mentioned, intangibles, injuries, special teams. Got to get it back on track. So, hey, the 49ers still have a shot. It's not over. Fat lady's not singing yet. And there's still plenty of time. I think, too, part of it for fans is we just got to switch the perception, right? I think that's part of killing everyone is they're like expecting that 5-0 team that we saw at the beginning of last year that held us through last season. That team's just not here right now. And so every time a performance doesn't match that, it's like, oh, we won, but like last week we won, but low-key felt like a loss.
It did. And again, it was just more frustrating because again, like I said it like 10 times, but I'll say it for the 11th time. You could play 60 minutes of football and be completely on point and still lose. But we just haven't seen that yet. And it's just, when is it going to happen? Because the opponents only gets louder from here. Where did they go after this? Green Bay? And then where did they go after that? Buffalo? Like, you've got to course correct this thing on Sunday against the Seahawks. Otherwise, I fear this is your version of the 2024 49ers because it's going to be 11 weeks of it. And that's something that you just can't like flip a switch on. I think at that point, you just might be able to correct some things and improve in certain areas, but it's not going to change the overall, I guess, the overall makeup of your team and just in a 2024 season in a vacuum.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah, I'm tired too, but it's already 8:00.
Hey, 2 hour stream. Let's go.
Hey,
you already
Steph
know
Curry's the GOAT.
He is.
What a game last night. That was one of the most fun NBA games I have seen in a long time, just based on the storylines and the way it was going back and forth. And then just Steph looked like that guy from the Olympics, man. Like, when are we going to start talking about Steph as like a GOAT, like a top 4, top 5 guy? Yeah,
I don't care.
But I think all right.
I've been talking about it since pre-KD. So but again, I'm like, whatever.
I think we need to start talking about Steph over LeBron, but that's a conversation for another podcast, another day.
that is. But hey, I think you're onto something. I'll just say that. I'll just say that.
It's too bad. It's too bad. Steph's son's only like 7 years old.
We just need him to hold on for about
15 more years. You got this.
15 more years.
Sean Turner says, "I'll write about it on Warriors Nation."
Yeah, there you go. Oh, there you go. Nice. See what you did there. All right, that's it for us. Let's get out of here. You know where to follow Jason and all his work over at Niners Nation. Go to sub to his channel, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate everyone for tapping in for State of the Franchise, and we are out. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.